a nightly stream. And tonight we are going to do a quick wrap up. This shouldn't be a very long stream, not compared to some of the other ones that I've done, but I want to go ahead and kind of do a wrap up of chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis, which is what we've covered so far, because it's a very fast moving beginning in Genesis because we get through creation and just like that. But I think it's good that periodically we'll stop at some point and go backwards a couple of steps to just kind of rehash where we've been. And this is as good of a time to stop as any, since we're getting ready to get into Abram's story, who doesn't remain Abram for long. Anyways, so I'm going to do some things real quick. I'm starting to hash out all this sharing on social media stuff and working with YouTube. I'm learning this stuff as I go along. So I just kind of want to see how this stuff is appearing. When I share it. So I just want to see how it's popping up onto on the YouTube, if it's coming on the same time. Because ideally, yeah, looks like I'm live right now. Let's see if I can share this. Well, ideally, I'm sharing this to both of my there we go. So just ideally, I'm sharing it on Facebook from both my profile and the other profile for Flawed Man as a page. This is for folks who, my personal Facebook page will be for me. As much as I dislike Facebook and social media in general, I do realize that it's required in order to have the Facebook stop. But I think this is gonna be the beginning of more outreach for me. So, like I said, if you like what you're reading, what you're seeing here, if you think somebody else can use it, by all means share this, like it, leave a comment, do whatever it takes. If you introduce somebody else, then that'll be great. But it looks like I might just have to take some time at the beginning of the stream just to make sure that I share everything correctly, and I'll try to figure that out in a way that's as seamless as possible. It's not as awkward for the viewers. Anyway, so good evening. I'm here tonight. I do not have my overalls on like I did yesterday. I had to go to work today, so I had to dress like somebody who needs to be in the office. So that was me. It's a little chilly. If you're not in Virginia, it's starting to get colder here. It's colder up north, obviously, but just getting a little warmer today. And let's talk about what we've discussed so far with Genesis. So we've just finished up chapter 11 in Genesis, and that was basically the genealogy coming from Noah and coming after the Tower of Babel, and we're left with Abram. And so Abram's going to be coming in chapter 12. I'm very excited to get to that because to me that's where you really start digging more deeper into the history of the Hebrews and just really laying the foundations more than ever for what's taught in the Old Testament, which Jesus comes and fulfills pretty much all of what's going on there. So when you're practicing sports, we'll talk about fundamentals. The fundamentals are found in the Old Testament. They're reiterated by Jesus, and he does a great job of putting those, of being an example of those fundamentals. But going back, I think and finding the origins it really speaks to somebody like me. So we talked about. So we started with Genesis 1 and 2, which really discuss creation, and it is God just creating the universe out of nothingness. And one of the things I've tried to tell people is don't get so hung up on the question. It's great to think about it as a as a mental exercise to kind of think of how you want your how you want your um, or how you think that God created things and how He's explaining it to us. And you'll hear me talk a lot about, especially in at this point. We're actually starting to move away from this with the beginning of Abram's story. Is the Are you taking the Bible literally or metaphorically? Because the creation story is fantastical, and I think I said that last night. It's a very difficult concept to think about. The beginning of everything. God, creating the universe. Well, what created God? Where was God at the beginning? And understanding all the complexity in creating a universe as we know it, all the scientific rules and physics and mathematics, chemistry, all this stuff came from, I guess the hands and the mind and the imagination of God. And it's such an incredible thing that it's difficult to fathom how this all came into being, and and just thinking the why would God create this? And I think that one of the good things that you can do is look inside yourself. We as humans like to create things, and we're made in God's image, so obviously we're sharing a lot of traits that God has, because I think that's what He wanted. He wanted to create beings that were a little slice of Himself. And while we certainly don't have godlike powers, you can see how we exercise and kind of express that idea of creation. And through, especially now when we are so technologically advanced, where now than we were thousands of years ago, and how fast we have come in such a short period of time. If you think about it, less than 150 years ago, we were entering the industrial revolution, and we have come from there to where we are now in a span so short that it doesn't compare to any advancement in technology in any other point in human history. And we're creating things left and right. And one of the big things, creating AI and technological environments within computers and stuff like that. That's a lot of creation that is, which we can see with seeing God on a much smaller scale and a much more limited scale. But I think it's a great example of showing us, or showing human traits that are reflective of God's nature, of this great creator and this incredible imagination that He has, on top of all all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, and all present. But when you actually get into the personality of God and how we kind of emulate it in a way, in many respects, it feels like being a child looking up to your father, looking up to a parent, because you share similar traits. Anyway, so that's a long way of saying, of wrapping up chapters 1 and 2 in the creation of all things. So God creates the universe in the order that it is described, and take that for what you will. Like I said, it's not that is a great subject to ask God once we've all passed away. Kind of, hey, how did all this come together? And see how fast God can make our heads spin trying to understand that. But when He does that, He creates Adam and Eve. Obviously that's the more important part for us, because we're created, right? So He creates Adam. Adam's walking around the Garden of Eden. He needs a companion. None of the animals are really fit to be that companion that he needs. So God creates woman. It's not to say that woman is separate from man, and that she is less than man because man was created in the image of God. No, God created woman just like man, in the image of Him, but with just different traits. And that becomes more clear after biting of the fruit of knowledge, which is your only rule that they weren't supposed to break. You're not supposed to bite from. You're not supposed to eat the fruit from this tree, and you know that's how we are as people. We got if there's one rule, we're going to find a way to break it because we can, and that's what Adam and Eve both do. And I do think that people make a good point that Adam had every opportunity to stop Eve from biting that apple, and then he ate it himself. And then God comes in and says, "What have you done?" And Adam goes, "Nope, she did it. She bit it, and then she told me to bite it, so I bit it." And again, if you have kids, when does that excuse ever work for the kid? Never works out. It probably didn't work out for you when you were a kid, unless your parents favored you over the other. Maybe that would work. So, God at this point, the trajectory of the human race has changed. We've gone from being kind of probably a more static people to more dynamic. And with that creation, with that consciousness, that extra consciousness of not understanding good and evil, and that knowledge that we were tempted into gaining, there's really no place for us in Eden anymore. So God cast them out. That's the punishment. And because of that punishment, God basically tasks us with what ends up becoming, I think, or laying the foundation for traditional gender roles. And man he's going to have to work hard, and what he works for is not going to come easy. And women are going to have pain during childbirth, but also dominated by men. And I think that's more of in a household that the man is supposed to assume the role of leader of the family in general, and the woman stands more in a support role. It's not to put one importance of one over the other. But as we've seen, we live in a very patriarchal society, and that's been the key to our success, I think, is the way that's set up, because it's just these natural tendencies. So we're cast out of Eden. Adam and Eve have two sons, Cain and Abel, and they are, going about doing their thing. Abel is a shepherd, or he's tending livestock or whatnot. He's raising animals, and Cain is farming, basically. And Cain gets mad at Abel because when they give their tribute to God, or they give offerings to God, God is happier with Abel's offerings than Cain's, and Cain is nonplussed about this. He's upset. Why? And God said, well, it's because Abel's bringing me the best of what he has, and sharing that with me, and you're bringing me just whatever leftovers that you can't be bothered to deal with. So I'm just getting the leftovers, basically. So yeah, I'm going to be happier with it. And so Cain gets upset about that, and then takes it way too personally and says, "Hey, Abel, come with me out to the field." And then he kills them. He kills him, and then God comes around, just like after Adam and Eve bit the fruit. God comes around. What's going on? And Abel does the same thing. It's like, oh well, I don't know where he is. That's not my business. God already knows what's going on. So Cain's cursed. And then Adam and Eve have another son, and Adam lives a long time. His new son Seth lives a long time. Cain lives a long time. He's cursed to continue to live, as opposed to being struck down and die and being killed by God for his sin. He has more kids, and so the earth populates to a degree. It's not very clear how populated the earth is becoming. But it does seem to get very ugly in that process. And when I say ugly, I mean very sinful in nature, and to the point where God is very upset about what has become of humans. And so he's like, all right, well, maybe I should just start over. And then he looks at Noah, who has come up as a righteous man, and a one very, um, very faithful to God. He goes, so he sees Noah and he goes, you know what? I'm not going to start over. I'm going to start with him and his family. And so he tells his family, he gives them instructions, build this really big boat, call it the ark, get all the animals, pair them up, put them in there, and I'm going to destroy the world. And Noah, to his credit, does exactly what he's told, and gathers his sons and their wives and his wife, and they all get on there, and you know, for basically a year, the earth is consumed by water. Rains for 40 days and 40 nights, and then it takes a while for all the system to for all that water to dry up or go back to being normal. So Noah gets out. He gets out there with his sons and his wife and their wives, and they go back to doing their own thing. So Noah does does I guess the Florida retiree thing where he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go retire. I'm gonna grow some things. I'm gonna plant some vineyards, and I'm gonna drink some wine. And one night he has too much wine, and he passes out naked in his tent. And Ham, I don't know if it's his youngest or whatever, one of his sons finds him naked, and he doesn't do anything about it. I really want to know more about that story. We were talking about it last night. Really want to know more about that story, why that ticked Noah off so bad. But it's he just basically goes out and tells his brothers, like, hey, Dad's passed out naked in there. I guess he's been hitting the wine recently. And his brothers, Noah's other sons, go in there and cover him up and don't look at him, because that's just awkward for everybody. Anyway, so once that's done, Noah wakes up. He's super pissed, curses Ham, and specifically Canaan. And the curiosity behind that is he cursed Canaan because Canaan had some involvement in it, or Canaan was just like his dad. Who knows? But Canaan is cursed, and he is supposed to be going to be dominated or ruled over by the ancestors of the other sons of Noah. And so everybody's spreading out, and there's kind of this one-off story towards the end of where we're at, and that's the Tower of Babel, where some folks in a city say, hey, we're going to build ourselves a tower to God, and we're going to be just like him. We'll be equals, or that's what the assumption I get out of it is. And so they go up into they start this building, and God looks down and he goes, look at these guys, and he's impressed. He seems impressed to a degree, like kind of like the wonder behind when you see your child creating something. He's like, look, these guys can do anything when they put their mind to it. But he also sees the pride and the hubris and the selfishness behind it, and he goes, you're gonna have to knock them down a peg or two. So he confounds them by basically shaking up the language, so they're not all communicating together. They're talking in different languages, and said, there you go. And so they can't communicate with each other. They don't have enough time to create translators or figure things out, and so they give up the project of the Tower of Babel, and they start to spread out more, and that's where we see the sons of the sons of Noah start to create and settle places like the land of Canaan, Egypt, places like that. Shem's children end up becoming what we know as the Semites. Different things like that, and so that's basically where we are. And the other thing we notice right at the end is we notice a decrease in the longevity of each of these folks by generation. So we go from Adam to Methuselah and Noah, where everybody's living almost 1,000 years. Like they're daggone close. We're talking about like 900 to 950 years old. Generally, we're seeing folks live, and that starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking every I think it's like 8 generations. By the time we get to Abram, um, his father, Abram's father, I think lives like 200 and some years. So we've gone from 900 to 950 to about 200 or so years, and like I said, there's a couple. Could that be a punishment as we get further and further away from that original time of Adam and Eve, and we let more and more sin into our life as a people? Or kind of my theory is on it, if you're taking a literal approach as they're populating the planet, you need that longevity to have as many kids as possible. But as that population starts to grow and get to a point where everything's much more sustaining population wise, then you don't need to live as long to do it. And either way you take it, there's insights and knowledge to be gained there, and um, things that you can take away that are fulfilling to yourself walking through Christ. So that's the wrap up. So we've got Abram, and that we're going to start tomorrow. So we'll start with that. Like I said, I'm really excited about that because Abram is Abram's a dude who's got his own problems, and but he's the guy he's persevering. There are times where he's cowardly. There's kind of times where he's kind of he does kind of make some dumb assumptions or does some dumb things. But what Abram is pretty much to a fault is faithful, and he listens. He listens, and specifically he listens when God tells him to do something. And I know I'm very critical of the fact that it's easy to listen to God when he's booming his voice down at you and commanding you to do things. We don't necessarily get the interaction with God that folks in the Old Testament do, specifically Abram or David, Solomon, folks like that, Samuel, where you're getting, or Moses, where you're actually conversing with God on a very real and physical level, it seems, and it's right in front of you. It's much easier to have faith when it's tangible and witnessable than it is when you're just like we do today. We have to take it on faith that things are happening. Things can seem like obviously divinely inspired, but it's much more difficult to keep that faith when times of doubt than, hey, I know where my parents live, and I know that they're there, and I know that I can call them and talk to them, even though I can't see them right now. But that's not the same with God. God's always all around, and he's always listening, and he's always communicating to you in his own way. But it's not as tangible. You can't go up there and give Jesus a hug, like you can go up and hug your parents if something's going on in your life. Either way, so that wraps us up. Like I said, I'm going to talk about one more. I'm going to say it one more time. This is where the really exciting stuff happens. We've pretty much finished the build-up of creation, humans, human settlements, and different languages, and everybody scattering everywhere. To now, where does the chosen people come about, and what is the origin story there? So, you guys have a great evening. I'll leave some comments. Leave me something to leave about. Give me something to talk to you about and converse to you about, because I really want to get people's perspective on what their takes are. And it's great. It's always cool to hear somebody's ideas of how they view creation, or how they think that Abram did something right or wrong, or how they might have done it differently, or what they get what kind of lesson they get out of those actions, or what kind of knowledge about God do we get out of studying that. But in the meantime, stay faithful. Have a great